you all. I'm a lawyer in Portugal for 30 years. I always worked with foreign investment, which 30 years ago was not the norm, and in real estate and in the construction sector. I was a partner of a big firm for 17 years and took part of some important arbitration and litigation processes, and processes like the enlargement of the bridge 25 de Abril. The leader of the consortium was our client at the office, and there were also Americans played an important part in this bridge in the beginning, such as in the enlargement of the bridge. Recently, in the I lecture in Heidelberg, which is one of the top universities in the world, and I do a little bit lectures worldwide about investment in Portugal and arbitration and litigation. In the 7-8 years, I started my own business, and interesting enough, 8 years ago when I started, I talked to a friend, a lawyer friend, located in the States, in New York, and I said, you know, we have to promote Portugal. I will create my office with American clients, with American clientele, and you would be my partner. And she said, you're so crazy. They have no clue where Portugal is. They will think that you are a Latina and that you are Spanish, and they have no interest in Portugal whatsoever. What a crazy idea. That makes no sense. They have no clue, and it will take ages for them to know where Portugal is. So I think it's interesting enough that 8 years afterwards, we are working with American clients. And at this point in the office, although we have an extensive experience, we are really focused on American clientele. Me and my team, we spoke with 400, 500 families altogether. So we are trying to understand American clients, and we are trying to understand how we can help them best, and also the specifics, because there are specifics in terms of the convention to avoid double taxation, in terms of taxation, in terms of the needs that the people have, and also in terms of the difficulties they would have in the country. Perhaps the difficulties will be in the details. Portugal is an amazing country, everybody is super happy, and perhaps we have a slow motion that is more a motion of a human being. But on the flip side, we are not that efficient, and bureaucracy can kill you and can make you a little bit crazy. So we try to address our clients' problems. I will start to speak very briefly. If anybody then later has any questions or would like to have a personal Zoom with me or my team, we will be available. So if Antonio wants me to rush up, there will be no problem whatsoever.
No, we have time. We have time. It's important, but we have time later during the evening and after hours.
But normally I'm very quick about this. So what I have to say about the process of purchasing a property, it's a very safe process in Portugal, and it's a straightforward process. So we have a land registry, and with the code you can assess the situation of a property, and you can know everything: who the owner is, who the previous owners were, if there is any litigation in respect to this property, if there is any mortgage or encumbrances. So this need of some states in the US where people do need a title insurance when they are doing a purchase acquisition. This is not a problem. This is not a question in Portugal, because with the land register and with this code that you can access, you can know immediately almost everything about the property and what in respect to this property will be enforceable in respective to you. I think we could talk about 4 main steps in the process of purchasing a property. When there is international people involved and in more modern constructions, it's common to have a reservation period. In the past, we didn't have that in the real estate law, but now it's very common to have a reservation period where you pay something like 5,000 to 10,000 euros. Sometimes this amount go to the lawyer's escrow account, and it's a refundable, but not always, but often it's a refundable sum. And you pay this sum, the property is taken out of the market, and during this time your lawyer or your trusted person can do a due diligence, a legal due diligence in respect to the property. In Portugal, it's not mandatory, but everybody does a promissory contract. And in this promissory contract, there is all the details of the contract. The details of the buyer, the details of the seller, the dates of completion, the venue of the deed, everything is in this promissory contract that people do, and that regulates. It's a major instrument to regulate the purchase of a property in Portugal. Afterwards, there is the deed. The deed normally is done by a notary, which is an independent person that will supervise again all the legality and all the legality of the transaction, and will make sure that everything is in order and there is nothing that can jeopardize your business. So this is a person with a public authority, although sometimes they are private, they do have public authority, and they will supervise again to know if everything is legal, if everything is in order. So this is also a major grantor for the legality of and the safety of the process of purchasing a property in Portugal. And normally, when you do the deed, immediately at the same page, the property is registered in your name before the land registry and before the tax authority. So what I have to say is the process is very safe, and you can be sure there will be no complications if you have the right people by your side. In terms of values, I would say that taking into account the value of a property, if you add 8 to 10%, that will cover all the taxes and all the costs of the deed and all the lawyers and the registry. You add 8 to 10% of the value of the property, and with that you have for sure all costs covered, even some money left. So this is I would say that also as a very important feature, the Portuguese are not rich, so this is a poor country. So once you buy a property, the real estate tax that you keep paying is very low in comparison to the States and to other European countries. So the real estate tax that you will be paying is a council tax that is varies, but it's less than 1%, and it's based on the tax value of the property and not the purchase price of the property. For instance, I have an apartment that in Lisbon that in today's economy is worth 500,000 euros, and I pay 500 euros in 2 installments of less than 250 euros in 6 months. So that's it. That's all the tax, which is
again.
I have
Less than 1%.
Yes,
He's out
Less
there.
than
He's
1%.
being.
yes, it's
So it's 1% of
no,
the
it's less.
than,
It's
Less.
less.
less than 1%
Because
of
the tax that you pay is based on the tax value, and the tax value in the majority of the situations is much
lower.
less than the transaction value of the property. So in these times it is really very little. And it's something that is important to take into account because it's very relevant when you are doing
lower than it's just
these are the documents, but I think it makes no sense to go in the details in respect of the documentation, but these grants lots of information about the property.
Hold on.
In
We can study this later by take a picture and
If you'd
But
like
I
to
will
share,
send- I
if
can
you could
send
send
you.
it to
Yeah,
send
I
it to
will
me by
send it,
WhatsApp,
yes,
and
yes,
it's a
right.
PDF file, and I'll put it in the
And
chat box.
I will
Thank you.
just mention, and I think that is good for the European Union. I worked a lot also in the energy sector, in energy construction sector. In Europe, in Portugal, when you buy a property here, it's important to have an energy performance certificate. And this is the European legislation because European was aware that that energy dependence and energy efficiency is a big word for Europe and for the world. So we have this, so you would know if the house that you are acquiring is efficient from an energy point of view or not, when you buy a property, because you get a classification in terms of the energy performance.
And if it's not, they have to make it energy
Not
efficient?
necessary, but you, at least you are aware. And
Okay.
in the new buildings, they are for sure aware, and they try to, even with the solar and the wind, they try to make as energy efficient as possible.
Awesome.
In terms of visas, we have the D7, which is very popular. The D7, the requirements are very low. There are basic three main requirements: the proof of financial means, the proof of accommodation, and the FBI background check. This is simplified because Portugal is full of bureaucracy and small details that can jeopardize the process, although the requirements are not complicated at all. In terms of financial means, what you are required to have is you have to show that you have on passive income, and passive income is the kind of income that you don't have to work for, such as interests, royalties, pensions, rentals. You have to prove that on average monthly you have 760 euros per main applicant, plus if you're bringing your wife under your visa, if she's not having an independent visa, or your kids, you should have plus 50% for a spouse. So a couple coming under one visa, they should be able to prove that they earn on passive income 1,100 euros per month. And there is a possibility that the spouse also has the option to go with a separate visa. These are the financial requirements. You also have to have proof of accommodation. So prior to initiating the application, you would have to have a 6 to 1 year lease in Portugal prior to initiating the application in your country of nationality or legal residency. You also have to present an FBI background check, and there are lots of other small details, but it doesn't make much sense to enter into them now. But it's important that probably you will need help from a national prior to initiating the process, because you need to have a tax number, which is something similar to your social security number. You will need a bank account set up in Portugal prior to initiating the process, and you need to have this proof of accommodation, which initially was not very demanding, but nowadays, and we just checked yesterday with Washington, they do demand a 6 to 1 year lease prior to initiating the process in your home country. We also, these are the requirements with a little bit more detail. This D7, it's important to mention, this D7, as all the other visas, with the exception of the Golden Visa, are residential visas. So there are visas that require you to reside in Portugal. You can, according to the law, in a 2-year period, you should not leave the country for more than 6 months in a row, or 8 months total, although the authorities are not very strict in this respect. So if you leave for more than 6 months in a row or 8 months total, and you have a professional reason to do so, or a family member to assist, the authorities are not very strict in this respect. What they will only check this upon the renewal of the D7 visa after 2 years, and they wanted to make sure that you do have a home in Portugal, that you are tax resident in Portugal, and that you do live here. So the residential requirements and laws are not very strict, but you do have to reside here for this visa. We have also the Golden Visa. The government, after some contradictory announcements, said that they will end the Golden Visa, so this might be the last chance to go for the Golden Visa. The Golden Visa has the disadvantage that you have to do an investment, whereas with the D7 you don't have to do an investment. But the great advantage of the golden visa is that the requirement to stay in Portugal are minimum. So with the golden visa, you're only obliged to live in Portugal 14 days in a 2-year period that you can divide as you please. So this is the advantage. So for those who are not, who don't want to move to Portugal or are not in the conditions to move to Portugal on a permanent basis, the golden visa could be a good opportunity for those. I will say that all these visas grant you the possibility to travel within the Schengen space, which is Europe plus Switzerland plus Iceland, without the need of a visa. And in the later stage, there is an easy path to citizenship if you meet other requirements such as basic knowledge of the language and you are inserted in the community. But you, after 5 years, you can get one of the best passports in the world. And once you have a Portuguese passport, you'll have a European passport, and you'll have the freedom to travel and live in every European country, which is live and work in a chosen European country. I don't talk much about the golden visa that's about to end. Probably you already know the important information. I will just say that the standard requirement in terms of real estate investments is 500,000 euros, but it can drop to 280,000 euros if you do an investment, and there are some interesting investments in this level of a place that is being renovated and is more than 30 years old. So I won't go much into the golden visa, but if you have questions, then I will be personally available for any questions, any personal questions that you might have. I would add something that is not. We also have initially those who were remote workers would come under the golden visa, which was a trend created by the pandemic. But now we also have a digital nomad visa that was created in the end of 2022. And in this digital nomad visa, which is not here, but I can give you the details if you are interested, the financial, this visa is for all people that are working in Portugal remotely by being paid by a foreign entity, if their work it's not, even if their work it's not digital at all, so it's irrespective of the type of work. If you are working in Portugal, living in Portugal, and working and being paid by a foreign entity, irrespective of the type of work and irrespective of the type of contract that you have, you can come to Portugal under a digital nomad visa. And in this case, the minimum amount that you have to prove as financial means is 3,040 euros, because it's for Portuguese minimum wages that you have to prove that you earn in the 3 months prior to initiating an application. And this digital nomad visa, until now the VSF is not, Portugal didn't delegate its powers to this agency to deal with the bureaucracy of this visa. What I think it was important also to talk about the NHR. The NHR is the non-habitual tax regime. This NHR for the Americans, I believe, has 2 major benefits. One is for pensionists. According to the NHR, normally with the conventions to avoid double taxation, people are taxed in respect to their pensions where they reside. And Portugal set to attract pensionists initially that it exempts totally for a 10-year period from paying taxes, but afterwards, due to the pressure of the European Union, Portugal said you'll be paying 10% in respect to your pension here in Portugal. But you only pay 10% if you're not paying 10% or more in the country that pays you the pension. And for the states that many times is a strange country in terms of taxation, and they tax people based on citizenship and not based on residency, many Americans will still be taxed in the states in respect to their pension. So this regime can benefit because it can exempt them from paying taxes here. This NHR regime also facilitates the mechanisms that exist to avoid double taxation. So it would be automatic if you have this NHR regime that many of your foreign passive income in the States, if you have dividends, rentals, they will be, with this regime, automatically exempted from paying taxes here in Portugal. There are some common misconceptions about this NHR regime, non-habitual tax regime. This is a tax regime, a tax benefit that you have to apply for. It's not automatic. There is a timeline to do it. If you pass this timeline, it's gone. You still also, even with this regime, if you reside in Portugal, you still have to present tax returns in Portugal. And probably you still have to pay some taxes here. It depends of the situation, but that might happen. As a final, the NHR, for those who have activities that might be considered high value activities, these are digital and tech people and some other professions, they may benefit from a 20% flat tax rate, but this in respect to the income generated here in Portugal. As a final note, in terms of taxation, I would say that we don't have wealth tax in Portugal, that we don't have inheritance tax for direct heirs and spouses, I think that's also important to add generally, that if you come to Portugal in terms of rights, you will be treated as a Portuguese except for very exceptional rights that are reserved to nationals, so you will be treated as a Portuguese. And this is the country that was one of the countries to abolish death penalty, but on the flip side is one of the safest countries in the world, which I think is interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you again.